Hello, everyone. Hope you're doing well today, and welcome back to another episode of the We Are All Music Foundation's Power of Music series. If you missed the last two, you can see the replays on Facebook and on YouTube. Episode 1 was about music's social role in today's society. We had a number of incredible music nonprofit founders on that episode. And episode 2 featured the executive directors of our 3 Power of Music grantees. My name is David Zussman. I'm a co-founder of the We Are All Music Foundation. And today we welcome to the show Chris Mills, a practicing music therapist. He will discuss music therapy, its uses, its health benefits, along with important resources and how to find music therapy in your area. But before we get going, I want to talk a bit in summary of all we accomplished at WAAM in 2020, a challenging year, of course, for everyone. We Are All Music Foundation is quickly becoming recognized as the central voice for music nonprofits that support underserved communities, education, and health and wellness. Our mission is to provide meaningful support to the most impactful organizations, use the power of music to improve lives and benefit society. WAAM awards transformative grants, works closely with each nonprofit to help them achieve their goals, develop collaborative initiatives, and guide best practices. So in 2020, after significant vetting of nearly 300 applications, we proudly awarded 8 grants to best-in-class music nonprofits. Our 3 Power of Music recipients were Education Through Music, Guitars Over Guns, Hip Hop Public Health. And 5 supporting grant recipients were Jazz House Kids, Little Kids Rock, Musicians on Call, Atlanta Music Project, and Music Haven, for which we received press from the likes of Forbes, Variety, Magazine, and others, support from major artists like DMC from Run DMC, Johnny Resnick of the Goo Goo Dolls, and producers like Tom Lord Alge and others who have won countless Grammy Awards. Our video production, The Power of Music Now More Than Ever, also highlighted these grantees and demonstrated some of the work that we're all doing. So check that out if you haven't seen it already. We also established partnerships with Sweetwater Music, the largest online retailer of music instruments and pro audio equipment in the US. They committed to offer knowledge, gear, savings to every music nonprofit in America. Thank you for your generosity, Sweetwater. And our followers are growing in the thousands on social media. Please visit us at weareallmusic.org to sign up for our mailing list, follow us on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn to join our mission. And our list of donors, from individuals to family offices to major corporations, is growing every day and means our message is coming across. Music is still underappreciated as a key ingredient to influence social change. We will shine a spotlight on its impact, supported by real data, real science, and we'll make music a need to have, not a nice to have. Lastly, thank you so much to our full WAAM team, and now continues to expand to over 20 people. And with that said, let's now turn our attention to an incredibly important topic, music therapy. So welcome again, Chris Mills. How are you doing today, Chris?
I'm good, David. Thanks for having me. It's really nice to be here to talk to you tonight.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, I want to kick things off, jump right into it, and learn about your background. You've had a very interesting journey, right? From musician all the way to therapist. Why don't you tell us about that journey?
Okay, so yeah, I started playing in bands in high school, and in college, and then went to Northwestern for film, and when I graduated from there, I was a songwriter, and I went out on the road. I started making records on a label called Sugar Free. I was on a few different labels over about 20 years. So I toured here in the States and in Europe, and it was good. It was very subsistence level musicians living, as many people who do what we do or who do what I do have had. And but as you get older, you start to look for a little bit more stability. And you know, I got into music because I really was interested in what it did for people and what it did for me when I was younger, helping me feel less isolated, really making me feel connected to the world in a way. And while I liked writing and performing, I never really got that um, from that. You know, I think when you start to do that, a lot of it becomes about who's buying your record, who's interested in what you're doing, as opposed to really that connection between people. So when I got a little bit older, I got married, had a daughter, I was starting to think of ways to kind of move out of performing. And I was on tour, and at a movie theater. I remember it really clearly in Columbus, Ohio. And there was a preview, a trailer for a movie. There was a documentary about using music with people with dementia. And it was really spectacular just to see people who are so locked within themselves start to come alive when they're listening to the music that they connected with, you know, when they were younger, when they had more facility. And it sort of rung a bell. You know, I had a friend when I was younger who went into music therapy, so I sort of knew a little bit about it, but uh, not as much as I wanted to know. So I did some research and went to NYU. There's a great master's program in music therapy at NYU, and I studied there and really found out what the profession was about. I trained at the Rebecca School in New York City, which is a school for kids with communicative disorders or differences, and also at the outpatient psychiatric unit at North Central Bronx Hospital for the adults with mental health challenges, and then did my full internship working in end of life palliative care, pain and palliative care, and music psychotherapy at the Louis Armstrong Center for Music and Medicine at Beth Israel Hospital. And then came out of that program and almost immediately started working at the Joseph M. Zanzari Children's Hospital at Hackensack University Medical Center, where I am now working in the inpatient units in neonatal intensive care and pediatric intensive care, the epilepsy monitoring unit, and then also general pediatrics, and also seeing some patients outpatient through neurology, really using music for what I originally wanted to do with it, which is to help people connect with themselves, you know, and connect with their who they really are when they're in really difficult situations, right?
Yep. No, that's an amazing journey, and we've talked a lot about what music therapy is, but let's talk about that some for the audience. What is music therapy? How does it traditionally work? How does it differ than uh, traditional music therapy? Let's talk about that.
The traditional therapy. Okay.
Well,
Uh,
how does it compare? What is music therapy? How does it compare?
so music therapy is a really broad clinical discipline. It's the clinical application of music used by someone who's trained and certified in music therapy to promote health and well-being. And it's really a process-oriented therapy in a lot of ways. It can also be used as a behavioral therapy. But what it really does is there are ways that we interact with music as human beings, right? On a neurological level, in terms of how music affects our physiology, our heart rate, our breathing, our muscle tension, and then also our emotional selves, our memories, who we are as people, right? So music therapy sort of takes all those things that music does and uses it to promote health and well-being. It's an incredibly broad discipline. It's used across populations and age groups, from premature babies that I work with in the neonatal ICU, all the way to people at the end of life and everything in between. It can be used as a neurological therapy for people using the sort of organizing principles of music and the way that we organize ourselves around that as just a basic stimulus, all the way to a psychotherapy. You know, using music as kind of the mode of expression as opposed to just talk, right? There's a lot of ways that we connect with music and can express ourselves in music, that aren't really available to us when we're using language, right? Language is very much a cognitive process, whereas music is really a process that integrates all of us, right? It's a whole brain stimulus, and we can leverage that
And
across.
what does that mean? Because people have said that. If you've heard that over and over again, if you're into music, whole brain stimulus.
So
Uh,
that so music is one of the only, if not the only, stimulus that affects the entire brain all at once. So it affects all of our what we call autonomic systems, like our heart rate, our breathing, our blood flow, things like that. So like if you're listening to something that's more relaxed, your body will entrain. Entrainment's sort of a music therapy term, which means your body is it's the body's tendency to synchronize
mhm.
with an oral stimulus, right? So it affects all of those areas. While it's also affecting our episodic memory, our cognitive processes, our the way we organize our movements, and it
Mhm.
does that instantaneously and all at once.
Yeah. And thinking about that, taking it a step further, let's talk about a little bit more depth the use cases. You mentioned a number of them when we were talking about what is music therapy, but let's start at the top or wherever you'd like, and pick some and dive a little bit deeper into some actual use cases.
Sure, sure. You know, the great thing about music and music and the clinical use of music is that it's a basic way that we interact, right? It's something that we've been using since before we had language, right? And it affects people pretty similarly from the beginning of life all the way to the end of life. So, for instance, when I work in the NICU with premature infants, I use rhythm, tone, melody to help babies stabilize themselves, right? If you are singing to an infant or if you're playing music for an infant with intention, you can help them organize how they breathe, how they're the tempo of their heart rate, right? So if a baby is unable to calm themselves, right?
Mhm.
They're burning calories, and if you've got a premature baby, that's you know you really want them to conserve those calories so they can grow. Um, you can help them stabilize so they're not burning as many calories, so they're healing. At the same time, their parents are going through a really traumatic experience, right?
Mhm.
Something that's really scary, something that causes a great deal of anxiety. So while you're doing the more physiological work with the child, with the parent, you can be using music to help them reduce their anxiety, to help them be more present, to help them regulate their own heart rate, their own breathing,
Mhm.
while at the same time providing continuity with who they are outside of the hospital, right? Because you can take songs that they know, that they love, that they connect with themselves, with who they are, with their history, bring them into this really threatening environment, and use that as a way to one, empower them
Mhm.
to be with their child and to be grounded in themselves in the moment,
Mhm.
right? And then also create continuity between what their life is going to be like when they move out of the hospital, right?
Yeah.
That's just basically relevant to what I do. Um,
I can relate to that because when my first child was born, no one knows when it's coming, right? So I was in a meeting. I was 30 or 40 floors up in Rock Center, and well, the cell phones didn't really work up there. And all of a sudden, my business partner says, "Your dad's trying to reach you." And I get to the bottom of the elevator, and I got like ding, 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 ding. The texts are coming in, like, "Where are you?" A couple of curse words, you know. And yeah, anxiety levels are going up, and I'm racing to the hospital, and it would have been nice if someone played me a nice ditty.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
but,
But
but but what you say about the child's heartbeat, we talked about this earlier. It's incredible. I mean, what it really can do, and you could see the reactions instantaneously.
yeah,
You could see this is someone child who's just come into the planet Earth, doesn't know anything, but it's instantaneous, right?
Yeah, yeah. But
So,
it's a process, but it can be very fast acting, and it can be effective, and it can help them stabilize over long periods of time. And there's even research that consistent application of music therapy for premature babies in the NICU can actually
mhm,
offset lags in brain development versus babies that are born at term. Right? It can offset. It can help support motor function. It can provide increased weight gain. It can actually, there's even studies that show that it can help shorten the duration of their hospitalization because of the way that music can stabilize them and then foster growth, right? But in terms of broader use, there are people that do amazing work with music for people with neurological issues, using music as a map to help organize movement, to help with regaining speech after someone's had a stroke, right? um, Through therapies that utilize singing um, as a part of the brain that isn't as an alternative part of the brain for expression.
mhm,
We use a different area for speaking than we do for singing. And if you lose your power of speech, you can use singing to rehab it, right? Starting off with singing and then extracting the melodic content, extracting the rhythmic content until you've got prosody of speech again in some cases.
wow.
Um,
And you've seen situations where other traditional methods have not been as effective, and then this is, you've seen, is the results typically faster, or is it more involved? How does, we're going to talk about this a little bit more as we go along in terms of what do the sessions look like, but uh, how does the music therapy typically get brought into the situation? How prevalent is it now in the country that it would be some place someone would seek to go first, versus is it something that happens later in the evaluation process?
what depends. For what I do, because I work in a hospital, right? They're coming for their medical treatment first,
Yeah.
and I'm going to come in and I'm going to assess a patient and make sure that it's the right therapy for them, and then use it accordingly. Um, but in mental health situations and people that are working with people with addiction, or people that are working in psychiatric care, music therapy is a way to help people stabilize themselves, and then also express things that are challenging for them, right? So if you are someone that's suffering from depression or suffering from anxiety, or having trouble um, relating to others, right? Because that can be a big
Mhm.
challenge when you have uh, um, issues with mental health. Music really provides an alternative avenue, right? Um, One, because it's expressive in a different way, but
Mhm.
also because music fosters feelings of safety, right? Music feelings fosters feelings of connection. So when I'm playing music with someone, if we're improvising or if we're playing a song together or singing a song together, right? We have this shared way of being that isn't reliant on sort of social norms or social cues, or things like that. So if you have a child with a communication difference,
Mhm.
right? Music offers them an alternative way to have a relationship with someone, and to have a reciprocal relationship with someone that's outside of um, what's expected in basic social interaction, right? So it allows for a lot more freedom. It allows for safety. It allows for regulation. Um, and then you can just kind of extrapolate from there why that might be effective. If you have trouble in talk therapy, right? Um, it might be easier for you to categorize your feelings, or to really look at your feelings outside of yourself when you're looking at a song, right? Or when you're listening to something, or when you're creating something, as opposed to just trying to tell me, you know, what's going on, right?
Yeah. What would someone expect in their first music therapy session,
Okay.
right? Give us an
Um,
example of how it gets started.
so because there's so many different
Sure,
applications,
sure.
every session is going to be different, but it really comes down to assessment. So what you really want to do in a lot of cases is find out how this person relates musically, right? So if I'm working with a neurotypical adult or adolescent, say at the hospital, the first thing I would do is just try and start to play music with them. So giving them something that's relatively easy to play
Mhm.
and diving right in, right? And when you do that, do they join me immediately? Do they hold back? Do they sit and listen? Do they stare at me, but maybe their toe is moving, maybe and you start to build off of these kind of musical cues to kind of get a picture of where they're at in terms of their function, neurologically or motorically, right? And in terms of how safe do they feel, how open are they at the outset. And then as you go along, you might talk about what they listen to, what works for them musically, right? To get a picture
Mhm.
of who they are. And then maybe I would take them through, the instruments that we have and see how they respond. What does this sound remind you of? Oh, it reminds you of the beach. Who do you go to the beach with? Do you like, is that something you enjoy? Is that something you don't enjoy? And sort of finding these different ways to see them, right? To let them show themselves to you through the music, right? And then when you respond to that, um, hopefully they feel more present, they feel more seen, they feel more recognized, they feel more heard, right? Than someone who's just coming in and and um, and doing a more um, direct approach, because music has a way of uh, helping us let down our guard a little bit um, and connect on a more emotional level, on a more empathetic level, on a more humanistic kind of level, because that's what music does. Music sees us. Music sees how we feel and lets us kind of bounce how we feel off of the music, right? And the music can hold that stuff for us. So that would that maybe I don't know if that was a little bit outside the box, but it's really a matter of how does this person represent themselves in music,
Mhm.
right? And how does music allow this person to represent themselves?
Now, I see you're very, very passionate about this. And what has been the biggest surprise to you uh, in the last few years in seeing what you've seen, doing what you're doing, the way that either more people are doing, getting involved in this practice, or could it be something that you've seen in a use case? What is it, the most interesting surprise that you've seen?
I think the thing that is most interesting to me, or surprising, I guess, is the way that music allows people to not only open themselves up to relationships that are beneficial, um, but the way that music allows people to connect with themselves, to be more themselves, to be more connected with um, their well self, if that
Mhm.
makes sense, with
That is,
with the healthy part of themselves, right?
mhm.
Um,
So the
be,
healthy part of themselves is always there. It's just a question of
Absolutely,
is it forward or not?
absolutely. And is it something that, in order to really heal, you have to know that that's a part of you, right? And music is so effective and so immediate in terms of um, connecting us with who we are, right? And for letting us, helping us understand ourselves, um, especially when you have the support of somebody who's trained in music therapy to really help you kind of get to that place, right? um, and the process of it is is so wonderful to watch, right? To see someone who is in pain, who's having physical pain, right, interact with music, and at the end of that interaction, lose their pain, have less pain. Like, you know, you work with people, um, and lots of times in the hospital we'll take a pain scale, and I remember working in palliative care with people, you know, with cancer patients, you know, and I would come in and they would rate their pain at an 8 or a 9, right? And then you spend time making music with them, talking to them about music, listening, sharing that experience with them, right? And at the end of the session, having them say, my pain's a 2, right? Or I'm not feeling any, I forgot that I was in pain, right?
Mhm.
And a lot of that has to do with the relationship and the interaction with the music. And then a lot of that has to do with the fact that music just reduces all of those things that exacerbate physical and emotional pain, right?
Yep. Yeah. No, that's so important. And I want to ask you something else. We didn't talk about this before, but I was speaking to one of my fellow co-founders of We Are All Music Foundation, Michael Solomon, who is also the founder of Musicians on Call. And I'm sure you know that Musicians on Call sends musicians into hospitals, and they play for cancer patients and people in pain and people of all sorts of needs. Uh, and what was interesting in conversing with him was when he said he knew how much the people receiving the music enjoyed it, benefited from it, received hope from it. But what was surprising was also how beneficial it was for the people playing the music,
Mhm.
going into the hospitals, right? So have you seen in your own life a benefit in connecting with these people? And in, is it, when you're there, is it a two-way street? Is it I know, there's patients and doctors and there's a,
Yeah.
whole engagement, but the reality is there, how's the connectivity for you?
I mean, I think as a career, it's very rewarding. I think you know, the differences between music therapy and something like Musicians on Call is the clinical distance of the
Yeah.
therapist, right? So um the you know, it's great to play music with people all day and connect with them, but the real focus of the work, you know, that a music therapist does is how do you extract that clinical benefit for the patient, right? How do you really take, you know, uh, the evidence-based
Mhm.
aspects of music therapy, of which there are
Yeah.
many, you
And,
know.
and, and I'm glad you said evidence-based because it's core to what we think about it. We're All Music Foundation, which is, it's not just hopes and dreams. It's what is the data, what is the science,
Yeah,
right? That
and
that shows that there's real impact. So can you give us some examples of, I mean, I don't, the exact quotes. I'm sure you don't have them right at your fingertips, but what data or science is could be readily found?
there's I mean there's a lot of great research going on, you know, all over the world. It's
Mhm.
a worldwide discipline. There's 5,000 plus music therapists in the states,
Mhm.
but it's a huge um, discipline throughout the world. Europe and UK and lots of different countries are really invested in music therapy, as a clinical practice. So there are studies happening all the time. There's a great study that just came out about music therapy's effect on resilience in patients undergoing chemotherapy, you know, infusions, and how really receiving regular music therapy helps these people mitigate some of the you know, uh, emotional challenges that come along with being diagnosed with cancer, right? In terms of neurological benefits. You know, there's great fMRI studies that have come out this year about, you know, the way that music therapy and the clinical application of music therapy for very premature babies, these babies born before 30 weeks gestation,
Mm.
um, how the consistent application of music therapy while they're in the NICU actually fosters brain development. You can see this on the scans in these studies. You know, I'm currently involved in a study out of the Louis Armstrong Center at Beth Israel Medical Center, Mount Sinai, doing a multi-site study on the effect of music therapy on babies with neonatal abstinence syndrome,
Mm.
right? And there's tons of studies on music therapy and anxiety, and depression and things like that. And then when you look from a medical standpoint at the effects of anxiety on post-operative outcomes, right, which is a different, you know, not a music therapy study, but studies that show how anxiety affects physical health as well as mental health. And then you look at the studies on how music therapy addresses issues of self-regulation, anxiety, depression, things like that. You just cross the two together, right? And so what's going to, how are these clinical applications of music actually going to come out and affect people's overall health, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And music therapy doesn't have to be one or the other, meaning that there are a lot of people you see that also see traditional therapists,
Oh, sure.
and
Yeah,
they'll
yeah,
also augment that with a level of music therapy.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's really, you know, it's really up to you. So, and I think that's something that's also really kind of taking off now is music therapy as it relates to trauma treatment, right? So people
Mhm.
who've been through you know, traumatic events, or who have longstanding trauma either from childhood or things like that. You know, using music therapy as a treatment to help mitigate a lot of the negative impacts of trauma, or as an alternative to talk therapy for people who really
Mhm.
need to express in a different way, who
Mhm.
really have challenges expressing verbally, right? Because
Mhm.
we're really good at defending against things when we're talking,
Mhm.
right? We're really good at not talking about stuff that we don't talk about.
Mhm.
But in music, it's really hard to disguise how you are, right?
That
Um,
that's it. It's hard to disguise with music.
yeah, because you play how you play how you feel, right?
That's right.
Um,
And so we have about, maybe 7-10 minutes left. And I want to have you pull on the heartstrings a little bit and give people some, maybe a couple of amazing stories that you've witnessed, you've seen things where, I mean, obviously we're going to leave the names of people and hospitals out of this, but give me some things you've seen in terms of working with a patient and how people improved, or just give some people some hope
I, some people,
in this world that we're in today. Provide us the hope, Chris.
I think the things that I observe or have seen are the ways that music really bridges um, the divide between um, the person as a patient, right? As someone who's a medical object in a way, right? And the person as themselves, right? And this can be, um, you know, uh, either someone who's going through something really difficult, or even people at the end of life. You know, I've worked with uh, people who are very musical throughout their lives, and at the end of their life had really lost a lot of their capacity, right? Had lost their capacity to speak, had lost the capacity to recognize their loved ones, right? um, but could still play, right? Could still hold on to an instrument, could still shake a shaker, right? Could still hear, right? So that, and working with their family and creating a situation where we're all making music together,
Hmm.
right, at the end of this person's life, giving them the opportunity to be themselves even when they've lost
Hmm.
everything, right? And then giving their family an opportunity to be with them, not just to be in the same room, but to really join with them in an experience that maybe they wouldn't have been able to have otherwise.
Hmm.
And that even goes um, for kids or adults that I've worked with who weren't even conscious, right? And who were at the end of life, and music fills the space, right? To be in a room with music, you're participating,
Hmm.
right? Because you're affecting how it's played. You are um, affecting the people that are playing it. So to take a family and give them an opportunity to have a shared experience with their child or with their parent, you know, um, when there are very few experiences left to be had. Like that's really the work that I think has been most powerful for me, right? Um, because you can still be yourself and be with someone in music when there are really no other ways to be
Hmm.
together.
Yeah. No, that's fantastic. And I mean, and to be clear, you don't have to play piano or saxophone or
Oh, to to
harmonica.
to be
No,
a
to
to be
be
a
part of
patient with
music
music
therapy.
therapy?
Yeah, to
No.
be no. So I want to be clear for everyone. Don't say, well, I don't play an instrument, so I can't do music therapy. I can't seek out a music therapist. There are all sorts of, you're clapping your hands, you're making music, there's a
Sure.
shaking.
Well, you're gonna have if you have a good music therapist, they're gonna facilitate that for you, right? They're gonna
Yeah.
open up. The idea is that everyone is musical, right? In some form, in some capacity, has a capacity to be in music, right?
Mhm.
To be in relationship with another person in a musical context. So you don't have to be a classically trained pianist. You don't have to have any rhythm. You don't have to be. There are basic things about just being a human being
Mhm.
that are musical, right? And that enable you to connect with music and to use the things that music gives us in order to find out more about yourself, in order to communicate with people um, um, when traditional forms of communication are cut off, right? Um, to communicate with yourself when you don't know how to do that, in a sort of normative fashion, right? um, Music really affords us all of these different things that we can use
Mhm.
um, to be
What
more.
resources are there out in the world today if someone wants to learn more, seek out where music therapy can be found in their area? Give us some ideas.
So there's many states have music therapy organizations. So I'm in New Jersey, and there's the New Jersey Association for Music Therapy, which is the NJAMT, which I think is probably njamt.org. There is the AMTA, which is the American Music Therapy Association, which you can find at musictherapy.org.
Mhm.
And they have a list of board certified music therapists because it is, a nationally certified profession with licensure in many different states. So in New York, they have. To be a music therapist, you have to be licensed. That's now in New Jersey. That'll be coming soon here in New Jersey. Um, so those two, those sorts of organizations are going to be a really great place to find music therapists. And then also, if you have a child that you're looking for music therapy for, contact any of your early interventions and organizations in your state. If you have an IEP, you can check in and see if music therapy is an option for your child through that. So um, those would be my suggestions for that sort of thing. And then there's always Google. right?
Yeah, of course, of course. And if you're listening and you know you have to go to the replay and then rewind that 3 or 4 times to write it all down, you don't have to do that. We have a slide at the end of the presentation here, episode with a lot of that information that Chris just shared. We're still going to leave up for at least a minute or two. And you can always contact our organization. We can get you additional information or get you in touch with people in your area or Chris. But I think we're almost out of time, Chris. I want to thank you so much for coming on this episode, for spending the time of the last few weeks. It's been really eye-opening for me personally, understanding how music therapy can help people. I believe that we're in a very interesting time right now with the pandemic, with heightened anxiety and depression, and behavioral changes that are happening that were totally unpredictable. And I commend you for what you're doing in the world and helping others. And I think that there should be more and more people seeking out this type of therapy, and if it's interesting to them. So lastly, I'll just want to thank anyone who has been involved in following the We Are All Music Foundation in the past year, have listened in, who have provided feedback, comments. All of it's welcome. Please like, share all these episodes, comment in the comments. It's always helpful. We do get back to people, and we want to hear from you. So please stay safe this holiday season. Happy holidays to everybody. And thank you so much for joining us for this episode. And we'll be back with another episode in the near future. And thank you so much. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.